Hello, good morning. Good morning. Oh, what a lovely sound. A lovely noise there from the ducks in the background. Now, welcome to Winter Duck ID. I'm just going to do a very quick piece of housekeeping before we start. Now, this is a Zoom webinar. The chat is switched off, but you can ask us some questions. So pop your questions in the Q&A box as we go, and we'll do our best to answer them. We do have the events team here who are on the hand to help with any technical inquiries, but anything that's really kind of Zoom related, we might not always be able to support. Rest assured, we are recording this and we'll put the recording on YouTube in the next few weeks if you miss anything. And I think that's probably everything I need to tell you, other than that the Zoom webinar will run today for about an hour. And as I say, questions and answers all the way through. And joining me will be John Carter, who is my ID expert for the day. So let's say hi to John. John, hello. He'll be joining us shortly. I will just say as well, ducks. So this is a really, really good time of year to watch ducks. They are in their most resplendent plumage. They're into their kind of breeding colours, breeding feathers. So it's a really, really good time to see them. And often, a lot of them are quite colourful, as you'll see today, and they stand out really well against the kind of wintry background. John, you're with us. Hi. Hello.
Hello.
Good morning.
How are you doing? You all right?
Very good. Thank you very much.
Good.
So I was just saying that it's a really good time of year to watch ducks. They really brighten up a winter day. We heard at the beginning there, the very distinctive Mallard, which we'll talk about in a moment, but there's many, many more that people might not be aware of, are there?
Oh yeah. I mean, the ducks all over the place, and it's they're a really lovely bird to kind of go out and get familiar with in the wintertime, and they're accessible to lots of people because there's bodies of water, canals, rivers, ponds, lakes, estuaries all over the countries. So we can most of us can get out and see ducks. So it's a great bird to go out and find at this time of year.
So let's get started. Let's take a look at ponds. So ponds are where most of us encounter birds up close, wild. Probably the wild animal that you have the closest connection with, other than the birds in your garden, when you're quite young. So we've got a couple of young people here engaging with the pond in a different way, but a lot of us go down to our local ponds when we're young, and we take a bag of bread for the ducks, and we'll talk about that in a minute as to whether that's a good idea or not. But let's have a look at the first duck here. Let's have a look at the first duck. So Mallard, John, what can you tell us about mallards?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is probably the most familiar duck for many of us. It's the archetypal kind of pond canal duck that we all see and we all kind of grow up with. This is a fabulous male. I mean, the fact that they're very common means that we sometimes overlook them. And but yeah, you spend time just taking time to look at a bird like this. Just look how striking that is. I mean, that fantastic metallic green head and that lovely chestnut breast patch and a white collar and a very bright yellow bill. Some mallard males have a blue bill as well, but these are they're just a fantastic looking bird, really. And yeah, we should spend more time enjoying these.
And the female as well. Let's move on to the female, because the female, different colours. Often, and you'll find this with most of the ducks we talk about today. Different colours. Why is that? Why is that in this case?
Yeah, it's a simple thing, really. The females, are their main role is to kind of sit on eggs, incubate eggs, look after the hatchlings and the ducklings when they're very young. And obviously, if you're gaudy and bright like the males are, you're going to stand out. So you're easy to be kind of found when you're meant to be kind of doing a kind of bit of covert nest operation. So that they blend in with the ground, with their environment, so they're harder to find. The males don't have anything to do with the nest in the same way, so they can be bright and colourful because their job is really to attract females. So they have different reasons to look the way they do. But even though the kind of people say, oh, the females are dull and they're brown and blah blah blah, they're not really. They're still as striking as the males, just not quite so obvious about it. I mean, the lovely caramel colours, the buffs, the browns, the nice scalloped edges of the feathers, they're really quite a beautiful bird when you take time, isolate them and look at them for the birds that they are. They're still striking.
And I know we're talking about ducks in wintertime, but come spring and summer, female mallard ducks work incredibly hard, don't they? The broods can be huge.
Yeah, exactly. And they can have more than one brood as well. So they can start really quite early in the season. And have lots of ducklings, and then those ducklings will grow and fledge, and then they can have another brood. And it's all about numbers, I mean, I suppose if reality is ducklings feed a lot of other things in the summer, other birds and animals, and so it's a numbers game. So the more you have, you want to guarantee that every adult at least has one youngster to kind of replace it to maintain a population level. So that's why they have lots of them, and they do work hard. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Now, there are, I would say, roughly two kind of different types of duck feeding strategies. Actually, probably more, but the two main ones are dabbling and diving. Which category do the mallards fall into?
They're dabbling ducks, so you'll often see them on the top of the water with their heads in the water, or even upending. So you see that kind of like, you know, the famous duck bum stuck in the air kind of image. And then what they're doing is they're just trying to get to food that's accessible within their reach. So you know, they're kind of looking for vegetation, maybe some small aquatic invertebrates, bits of small animals and things that are in the water as well. But they're just foraging, so they prefer the kind of shallower water areas. And so the other birds, the other types of ducks are diving ducks, but we'll get onto those shortly, I guess. But yeah, so when you're trying to identify ducks, you know, if you identify the way it's feeding first, it will kind of narrow down the species that you're going to try and identify from. So if you've got a book and it's just pages and pages of ducks and you're confused by that, well, you can disregard all the diving ducks straight away if you know it's a dabbling duck from the way it's feeding. So that's a good starting point for identifying them.
Let's look at a fairly common diving duck now. So this is the tufted duck, this next one. And this is the female.
Yeah, so yeah, when you watch these foraging for food, they dive. They go wholly underwater and they disappear for a few seconds and they bob back up again somewhere else. And so their strategy is very different. They're going much deeper. So as a consequence, they tend to prefer deeper areas of water. So your dabbling ducks will often be around the edges, or they'll be loafing out in the middle. Whereas the diving ducks, when they're feeding, they're actively feeding often in deeper water, and they're going down again. They're getting food items that the other birds can't reach, that the dabbling ducks. So it's about, you know, they've evolved to take full advantage of all the food availability, you know, with any water body. So these things are very active. They're up and down all the time, and they often go around in little packs. So yeah, they're quite distinctive and they're quite easy to see. Tufted duck's quite a common bird. They're quite easy to see on kind of town parks and lakes and reservoirs and things like that. The females are, again, a little more subtle than the males. They have a paler side. They've got that lovely striking yellow eye. That bill really stands out, that lovely pale blue bill with a black tip on it. And you can even see the female has got a bit of a semblance of a tuft there. So that's where they get the name from, the tufted duck. The male has a far greater tuft.
Let's look at the male. Let's look at the male. So we can see that tuft is slightly, it's longer, goes down further down the back of the head, doesn't it?
Exactly. And it varies. You know, some of them have really, really noticeable tufts and some less so. But you can see that lovely white, you know, bright white panel down the side of the flanks there. Really quite distinctive. And that pale bill is offset against the very, very dark body and that lovely bright yellow eye. I mean, they're really, really striking bird. Yeah.
Let's have a quick look at the tufted duck video. We can see some of them in action. Now, a couple of other things about tufted ducks. Am I right in thinking, John, that our population that we have here are joined by vast numbers from Northern and Eastern Europe during the winter?
Yeah, generally, I mean, that's true of most duck species, really. You know, our winters are relatively mild because we're kind of, you know, nice and damp and wet kind of island nation, you know, off the northwest coast of most of Europe. So the birds that breed up in Finland, Norway, Russia, into Eastern Europe, you know, it gets very, very bitter, very cold, and the, you know, conditions get pretty brutal in winter there. So they move west, they move south, and we get lots and lots of ducks that supplement the numbers of our breeding birds. So tufted ducks do breed in the UK in, you know, relatively small numbers, but then, you know, the numbers go through the roof in winter, and this time of year in particular, numbers are going up almost on a daily basis. Now, if we get a real cold snap, you know, from the east, then numbers will go up almost overnight, and you see many, many ducks on your local ponds and reservoirs and lakes and such. And so, yeah, they kind of come through the winter and really kind of peak in the early part of the new year kind of thing. When January, February is usually when you've got the majority of all your wildfowl in place. The same with geese, same with swans. You know, they're all escaping the frozen north to come to the balmy conditions of the British Isles.
So we're quite a significant place for ducks. So it's quite important that we keep
Absolutely.
the areas, those areas, safe for them. So they need clean water. They need, well, they don't need disturbance. I mean, that's pretty important during the winter as well, isn't it?
It is, yeah, particularly in places like estuaries and things like that, where you get big numbers of things like Wigeon and Teal and things like that. You know, they're escaping some pretty harsh conditions, and they need to feed, they need to rest, and ducks, you know, all over the UK, you know, they're susceptible to disturbance. So, you know, the increasing, you know, people out walking with dogs and things like that, you can really kind of have a negative impact on these birds at a time when it's really crucial that they're storing energy. So we need to just think about how we go about doing that without disturbing too much the wildlife when we're out and about. They're great to see, so it's lovely to go about to watch them as they're feeding and stuff, but just be mindful of grazing birds or resting birds and getting too close to them. Because they do need to reserve that energy because it's cold at night and they need to kind of keep warm and survive through the night. So if they're constantly flying from A to B to escape, you know, disturbance, it can just really sap them valuable energy that they need to help them survive, really.
Absolutely. Now, let's have a look at a easily confused species with tufted ducks. This is Scort. Now, we don't get so many of these, do we?
No, these are a scarcer bird by far. They tend to be more marine, usually. You get them on estuaries and on the coast, but they will come onto reservoirs and lakes and ponds, and, you know, they can turn up pretty much anywhere inland. Now, one of the things, yeah, superficially, they look very similar, particularly, you know, the females, but as you see, the male's got a very, very pale back, so it's almost like a wraparound. The white kind of becomes a very, very pale grey and goes right around the back of the head. The back, sorry, over onto the mantle, as we call it. It doesn't have a tuft, has much rounder head. The female, a bit trickier because that pale back isn't quite as obvious. They have a paler back than a female tufted duck. They're also paler on the sides. They also have a great area of white around the base of the bill. But beware tufted ducks, because some tufted duck females also have white around the base of the bill. So look at the head shape. Look, they're a stockier bird generally. Look at the sides and the back and the females. A little bit of time. It's a good bird to kind of to spend time looking at and familiarising yourself with tufted ducks, so that when you see a Scort, you'll realise it's something slightly different. Structurally, they're a bit different, but yeah, it's a tricky one, and one, you know, it's good fun to go out and have a go at trying to identify these things.
So we've got 3 more species to look at on the duck pond. Now these are very vague categories, and quite a lot of these ducks find on rivers as well. So bear with us. But the 3 other species I picked. Let's move on to the next one. Shoveler, really distinctive duck, isn't it? This one.
Yeah, I mean, look at that. It's an absolute cracker, isn't it? I mean, aside of all the colours and all the jazz going on the bird itself, look at that bill. I mean, that's the thing. That's what gives it its name. That spatulate shaped bill, which is used for, you know, sifting through water and picking up bits of food, and it is shaped like a shovel. It's you know, it's appropriately named. But they are a lovely bird. That bottle green head, a lovely chestnut flanks. You can see a bit of blue there. That's in the forewing of the bird. And lots of ducks are quite identifiable in flight because of their wing patterns. They have different coloured sections of the wing, and the shovel has a lovely blue forewing, as well as what we call a speculum, which is a bright coloured patch on a bird's wing, which can be purple or green or all sorts of different colours depending on the bird. So it's good to get familiar with wing patterns as well when you're trying to identify ducks. Look through your books and see which birds have which wing patterns, because very often you see ducks flying by and they're identifiable purely by their wing patterns. But that's a very handsome bird, isn't it? And quite common as well, you know, not really very difficult to find throughout much of the country.
Let's have a look at the next slide. I think this is either one in molt or a female.
Yeah, the female's behind. She's a bit warmer, yeah, and a bit kind of and with slightly bigger splotchy kind of pattern on her side. And the thing about shoveler, they're really, really bright orange legs. You see this when they're paddling around. The orange kind of stands out quite a lot. So yeah, you'll have juvenile males in summer molt before they molt into their winter finery, and they kind of all look a bit like females because again they're not fully active, and they've got to try and make sure they don't get caught and eaten by things. So by being better camouflaged, it helps them. But you can see that lovely blue forewing in there, and that's really distinctive on the shovel. You've got blue, white, and then that lovely green speculum. It's just fabulous. And that bill, I mean, just look at it, and that staring eye. It's quite an odd-looking bird, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, the more you look at the shoveler's bill, the more you think, how did this come about? Shovelers do a really interesting behaviour, which I love to watch, and I've seen them going in circles on the water, stirring. I don't know if this video will show it, but stirring up food from the bottom, don't they? Let's just have a look.
Yeah,
And these ones were just having a dabble here, but I've seen them going in circles. Sometimes it's one, sometimes it's a pair, sometimes it's a whole load. Now, what are they doing? How does it work?
well, they're just stirring stuff up. There's lots of weed and mud and vegetation down there, and the food is within that. So it could be kind of grass seeds and all sorts of other plant material that they want to eat. And there'll also be small animals within there as well that they're going to happily kind of take on board as well. So they're kind of stirring it all up to try and find it, and they're sifting through. It's a bit like you see other birds do it. You see waders doing that kind of thing, and spoonbills famously kind of doing that sifty kind of movement. And it's just about trying to find what's lurking down there and snatching it up and enjoying it for lunch, really. Yeah.
And a good point about grass seed, because I know that on a lot of our nature reserves, the management involves you have a sort of wet, boggy, grassy area in the summer, but in winter, often water levels are raised and the grass seeds are all kind of floating around in that, and that enables ducks to come out, and they've got the safety of the water, plus they've got the food in there as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's what obviously what we do lots of habitat management for across lots of our sites. Seasonal, access for food and safety and loafing areas and all that, and making sure that we provide everything that these wild birds need at the most important time as well.
So let's look at a duck that's often discovered, thought of as being a bit dull, but I think it's absolutely stunning. Now, this is the Gadwall. Tell us about the Gadwall.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Jamie. It's one of my favourites. It's just such a subtle, pretty bird, really. It's a little bit smaller than a mallard, but easily overlooked. Often I'll be in a hide, with visitors, and people kind of almost look over them. It's just some ducks there. Well, if you look at them, they're really quite striking. The male's got this lovely kind of really fine patterning on the breast and on the back. It's almost like bark or really fine fungus or something like that. It's just beautiful. It's vermiculated, I think the word is that they use. The female, again, equally pretty, but a bit coarser in her plumage style. She's got kind of a lot of yellow in the bill. The male has a dark bill. But also when the male turns on his side, you see he's got his lovely black undertail, this kind of black bottom. And then in flight, again, they've got these lovely white chestnut black wings, just really, really great. And they're such a delicate little bird. They're almost... they're not very flashy to look at, and their behaviour is also a little bit kind of less flashy as well. So they do a thing often where they'll follow coot around. You get a pair of Gadwall, we're following a group of coot around. And what they do is they wait for the coot to basically do all the hard work, diving down, stirring up all the stuff. And whatever floats up to the top that the coot don't maybe pick up on, or they're not quick enough to get, the Gadwall scoop it up. They kind of follow them, basically sweeping up after them. It's called parasitism. Yeah. And it's a tried and proven technique, because there's plenty of Gadwall around. And the numbers are increasing as well. They were quite a scarce bird here at one point, but there were some introductions done. In the 1960s and such, in the 70s, and for some reason, I don't know why they did the introductions, but that helped supplement the population here, and they've continued to grow. So at a place like Leighton Moss, where I am, there are more Gadwall now than at any point in history, and they far outnumber Mallard now. That's an interesting shift. Mallard seem to be kind of declining, and the Gadwall numbers are going up.
Let's take a look at the Gadwall video. There's a quick video, and you'll see that black on the back of the birds, which is quite distinctive when you look at the black on the tail, I should say. It really does stand out. Let's move on to a very, very colourful one now. This is a captive flock. I took this photo years ago at Teal on the Wetland Centre. But these birds were in captivity in lots of parks, but now they've spread out, haven't they?
Yeah, they're now a naturalised breeding species. They're firmly on the British list. So if you see one of these, you can tick them off on your book, in your I Spy book of wildfowl or whatever. They're fairly widespread, more so in the south of England than many places, but they do appear almost anywhere. And self-sustaining, wild breeding population now that seems to be pretty familiar in lots of places around the country. I mean, they're incredibly dazzling looking. I mean, they're a bit over the top for my liking. I've got to be honest, they're a bit too gaudy for me. But they are pretty stunning, aren't they? Still, from Southeast Asia is where they originate, and as you say, they're brought over because they look like that into collections, and subsequent escapes and all the rest of it mean that they're now widespread. Yeah.
Yep. So if you see a duck with an orange sail sticking out the back, that's probably a male mandarin. And these are hole nesting birds. They nest in tree holes, don't they?
They do, yeah, yeah. Like some of our actual, native species also nest in trees. It's quite an unusual kind of. There's not many ducks that do that, but there's a few. We'll get onto those in a minute, I guess.
Yeah. Let's take a few questions. So time for a quick pond Q&A. I've had a few interesting questions come in actually. So this is a really nice one, based on what we were saying about breeding plumage at the beginning. This is from Catherine, who says, I'm confused about why mallards are in breeding plumage now, because the ones that come into the pond that Catherine watches mate in April and May. So how does that work, John?
Well, the interesting thing about most ducks is they go through this kind of molt strategy at the end of the breeding season. So they go into this molt, which we call eclipse molt. And basically, while they lose all their feathers and grow all their feathers over a period of time, because they're less able to escape predators, the males adopt a female-like temporary plumage. And then they come out of that and they molt at this time of year, in the late autumn and into early winter, into their absolute best, clear, crisp, clean finery. And that's because they use the winter time to pair up, to attract the females, so that by the time they get to spring, they don't have to go through all that then. So they're ready to breed the minute they go. So they pair up now, so they'll already be impressing females. And so the ones that migrate in particular, it means what they can do is actually arrive on the breeding grounds in northern Europe in a very short window of time to breed, and that they're ready to get cracking. They can go straight onto the nest, they can lay the eggs, and are there. So it's all about a slow build. So they might breed, they might lay their eggs in April, but they'll have been paired up and matched and already connected right the way from now, really.
And linked question from Prashant, do tufted ducks stay the same colour throughout the year? They molt as well, don't they?
They do molt, yeah. So the males will adopt a more female-like plumage for a short period of time in the late autumn. But generally, yeah, they still look similar. I mean, they'll always have a palish side and a kind of, a bit of a tuft maybe. But the crisp males will start looking even better now for the next few months, yeah.
And final question on food for ducks in ponds. So I was saying at the beginning that for many of us, that was our first, link with the natural world, with getting up close to ducks feeding bread. John says, what is the most nourishing food for mallard ducks? And I guess that will count for other ducks on a duck pond. What should we do?
I mean, basically seed and food of that nature, and chopped vegetables and things like that. Anything that replicates or substitutes their wild food. I mean, bread, if you've got some really quite seedy brown bread, in moderation, that's not going to do them any harm at all. But if you give them kind of, white bread that's got nothing in it, it just fills them up and it doesn't really give them a great deal of nourishment. So I'd go for seeds. You can buy duck food. I mean, you can use that stuff. That seems to be kind of pretty popular. So yeah, I'd go for, even, table mix. When I go out and fill up the bird feeders here, I'm always followed by, a cold mallards, around my feet, picking up any bits of seed I spill. So they obviously like the sunflower hearts and everything else that we put out. So yeah, just keeps close to the kind of food they might get. So chopped lettuce and bits of chopped vegetables, finely chopped. They'll enjoy that. I don't know about you, Jamie. What do you feed them?
If people buy those bagged salads, leftover half, bit of a bagged salad goes down well. Peas, sweet corn. You'll often find though, if there's a pond that's oversubscribed with people enthusiastically feeding the ducks, they might not be very hungry at all. So just bear in mind, if there's already people feeding those loads of food, you don't want to overdo it, because that food will sink to the bottom or it will go mouldy around the edges, and it's not good for anybody. Let's move on to lakes now. So we're going to look at some more species. So we're doing this in 3 sections. We've done ponds, we're going to look at lakes, and we're going to look at sea ducks at the end. So let's take a look at duck you're going to see on the lakes. Lovely picture of Lake Vyrnwy there, one of our nature reserves in Wales. So the next duck we're going to show you, I think, is absolutely stunning. So let's have a look at the pintail.
Yeah, I said before, Gadwall's one of my favourite, but it's actually well eclipsed by this. Pintail is my favourite. Yeah, dabbling duck at least.
We're just waiting for the pintail. We're still admiring Lake Vyrnwy, to be fair. But
I've got the pintail on my screen.
So. Well, let's move on. You talk about the pintail. Oh, there it is.
Yeah. I mean, the drake there with that lovely chocolate brown head and the white stripe running up the back of the head and onto the neck and breast, and those vermiculated lines, those lovely greys and subtle patterns on the breast there. And those lovely, long, delicate kind of almost, the really, really elegant long feathers on the back. They are a stunning bird. They're very long necked, they're very elegant. They've got this lovely long tail as well, which of course gives them the name Pintail. The female, again, poor thing, she kind of, she does live in the shadow of this rather over the top fella next to her. But again, she has a very important job to do. She doesn't want to be too flashy because when she's on the nest, she doesn't want Arctic foxes or anything else to kind of come along and find her. But they are still a really, really pretty bird. The females are just so elegant, and the way they sit in the water is very elegant. They sit very upright, very long-necked, very kind of very slender and long. And even in flight, they're quite distinctive. You can see how long and slim they are. They're lovely, lovely bird.
It's always a treat to see those. Let's take a look at a quick video of some pintail. I love the way the pair was swimming there together. And we did get Pochard appearing at the beginning there. We'll see those in a moment. But let's have a look now at the smallest duck that we get in the UK. This is the teal.
Yeah, this is Eurasian teal. And I mean, actually, one thing that this shares in common with Pintail is that lovely kind of pale patch at the side of the tail there. But again, that lovely vermiculated pattern, the grey pattern on there, the really bold white line down the side of the bird there on the edge of the wing, that black tail and yellow triangle. But then the most striking feature really is that head pattern. It's incredible. It's a kind of a coppery colour red with a green, where the teal name comes from for the colour, running through the eye. And again, with many of these things with birds, it's not pigment colour. It's about the way that the light refracts off the structure of the feathers. So the colours can change. As you look at a bird in good light, as they move the head around, the colours of the head change. And the same with the speculum in the wing. I mean, a green winged teal, as it's kind of North American counterparts now. The speculum's often green, but then it just turns slightly and it goes purple. It's a fabulous thing to witness, and it's lovely to hear people kind of seeing that and being marvelled by it. But these are tiny little birds by comparison to the other ducks, very small. And again, huge numbers arrive here in winter from further north and east, spend the winter with us, and you can get them in really quite significant flocks.
Let's see the pair. Let's see the picture. We've got a picture of the female as well. Yeah, obviously similar in size. And I think we'll keep an eye out for it later. I think in one of the videos a bit later on, we see a teal float past, and you can just see the scale of it, how much smaller it is than the others. Let's take a look at Wigeon. So this is another duck we get in large numbers in the winter. And I more often see these. I don't know about you, John. I more often see these on grass rather than on the water.
Yeah, I mean, it depends where you are really and where you go. But sometimes you'll get these grazing on lakesides in large numbers. I tend to see them more on estuaries here because I'm in Morecambe Bay and there's large numbers here. They tend to kind of stick to the estuaries. But yeah, they're grazers by nature. So whether it's salt marsh or whether it's somebody, kind of nice lawn or whatever, they'll be grazing away. They like to kind of nibble away at grass. And again, they're mainly vegetarians. They'll take up bits of grass seed as well, and they'll feed in the water too. But yeah, you do get these very, very large numbers. And they've got this fabulous sound, which for me is very evocative of winter. It's like, and when you get them en masse doing it, it's just a fantastic sound. And it says to me, winter, on the coast or even inland where you get, fair numbers as well on reservoirs and lakes.
We'll hear that in a moment. So a quick look at the female. So similar shape, obviously. That kind of bluey grey bill with a black tip again.
Yeah, it looks quite startled, that particular bird, doesn't it? They often have a very pale belly as well. So when you see these out on feeding on the ground, they've got a really, really noticeable pale belly. Think about the male. I mean, you can see that's got a bit of a dark eye mask there. The male has this kind of almost a dark eye mask effect on that coppery head as well. When the male turns its head towards, it's got a big, bright yellow stripe running down the front of its head, which is kind of hard to miss. But the females are, again, a bit more subtle, but still a very handsome-looking bird, I think.
Let's have a look and a listen to the Wigeon. see that teal that came in at the end. So you can see, yeah, so much smaller, and really, really distinctive.
Yeah, but they kind of almost look similar, don't they? Now, the copper
Yeah.
head, the white stripe, the grey on the back, but the Wigeon's got that lovely pink, and as you say, it's a much bigger bird, and the teal is really quite small by comparison. Yeah.
Let's look at Pochard, another red-headed duck, which you saw earlier. I love this photo.
Yeah, it's glorious, isn't it? I mean, it's just copper, isn't it, glowing off that, and that stark red eye as well in the thing. Now, similar to a Scoter we mentioned before, where the kind of the sides almost roll over onto the back as well. This is, it's wrapped in silver. Is this bird? It's absolutely fantastic. It's got black at one end of it. It's got black at the other end of it, topped with copper and silver. It's just an incredible bird. I mean, if you kind of made things out of metal, this is what you'd make, isn't it? If you want to make a bird out of metal, it's just got all those components. It's just such a striking thing. And again, these are diving ducks, so these will be out on deeper water and they'll keep going down, as opposed to your Wigeon, your teal, which dabble. This is one of those divers again. And again, a bird that comes in winter. We have a few nesting, in the UK as well. They do breed in small numbers, but the numbers are supplemented notably in winter. But they are in decline. They're one of those species that's suffering quite a bit. And there's not 100% certain as to why that is, but there seems to be a disproportionate number of males to females. And that might be impacting on their ability to kind of pair up and sustain a viable population. So we need to kind of keep an eye on these birds and see what's happening.
Let's take a look at the female.
Yeah, quite a striking face pattern. When you see this out in the water, they'll often sit quite up, and they've got this kind of pale patch on the base of the bill and this kind of quite clear eye ring and a line going behind it. Quite striking. But because diving ducks often tend to be together, you'll see one of these in amongst the males and you'll know what it is. But if you see one on its own, it's quite a tricky one. You've got to get your field guide out, make a few notes, look at the head shape, look at the way it's sitting, look at the way it's feeding. The face pattern's really quite an interesting one to make a note of. And you should be able to nail it. But again, there's still subtle elements of that grey back and the pale sides there. So it's not wholly brown. But yeah, it's a lovely bird, I think.
While we're looking at a diving duck, I just want to throw in a question from Chris, who says, how deep do diving ducks dive? Do we know that, John?
I don't actually. I mean, there will be the information out there. I can't come up with a figure off the top of my head. I can look it up and we can answer it later on. And
yeah, we'll keep your details there and we'll find out a bit later on. But you will notice that a lot of these diving ducks do prefer the deeper lagoons, deeper reservoirs, deeper flooded gravel pits. They'll be out in the middle. So we can only speculate at this stage. So I'm not going to guess, but we will look that up for you and we will find out. Let's move on to the next slide, which I think has got a little video. Now, there's lots of male Pochard here. Let's have a look at them. That's the first lovely example we've had of a duck diving. Look how perfect that was. How perfectly adapted that bird is. The sleek aerodynamic shape of the bird. I love watching those. But they can be quite tricky, can't they? Especially with sea ducks, which we'll talk about later. When you're trying to point them out to someone through your binoculars or through a telescope, and it just vanishes.
It's just there. Oh no, it's just gone down. Oh, it's just come back up. No, it's come back down again. I mean, there was a guest appearance by a couple of hooper swans in there and a mallard. And as you noticed, there are mostly males in there, Jamie. But there's one female came by. But you were saying the other day that you'd read that males tend to migrate and winter further north than the females, which is why we see a disproportionate number. Is that right? Yeah. So I remember seeing this at WWT Welney, which is in the east of England, and actually a lot of the ducks there will be. I don't know if that film was from there, but a lot of the ducks there will be Pochard, male Pochard. So interesting. So who knows whether that's having an impact on, if the females overwinter somewhere differently, is that having an impact on their population? Something that definitely needs to be looked into. Let's take a look at a comparison slide now, because there is another Pochard that we get, but you can perhaps talk us through some of the differences. So this is the red-crested. This is red-necked Pochard, which is a continental bird, really, not a native species as such to the UK. Though again, like the Mandarin, it has been naturalised in small numbers here and there. Never really got a toehold here. You can see in the wetlands in Spain and places like that. But they're not a diving duck. They're not really, they're not really a Pochard, really. I mean, in a true sense, they're more of a dabbler, but they've got a very different head shape. It's like a massive Seville orange with this like red beak sticking out of it. But similarly, they've got that black front and the black back, but they've got a dark back, pale sides, And I mean, I'm presuming some of the records of these that have occurred in the UK are probably vagrant birds from the continent, but they are mostly a kind of a naturalized escape kind of population. And there are some places where there are significant smallish populations that seem to be self-sustaining. But if you see one of these on a canal or a lake or a pond, it's probably just hopped over a fence from somewhere and gone for a bit of a walkabout.
Yeah. It probably is. So let's take a look at Goldeneye now. These are absolutely stunning, and I wonder how they got their name.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they are fabulous. And these are really quite small, quite compact ducks as well. And these come down from Northern Europe again for the winter. Small numbers do breed in Scotland, and they can be seen, at some of our sites around Speyside, Lockgart and places like that, where they nest in nest boxes. So we were talking before about some ducks nesting in holes in trees. That's what Goldeneye do, as do Goosander and the Mandarins. So they nest in holes in trees naturally, but they do take really readily to boxes that we provide for them, which obviously is helpful because we've got tidier woodlands these days, and old rotting trees don't tend to get left to stand in many places. By providing nest boxes, we can give them a really good helping hand. And it's great because the ducklings, soon after hatching, have to leap from these boxes all the way down to the ground and then make their way to the water. Fabulous birds. But they are stunning. The drakes in particular, again, I'm sorry for females, it's the drakes are something else. But again, the numbers will increase as the winters get harder in the north and we see more numbers coming in. But the females are still really smart looking birds, that bright eye, that chocolate head, lovely greys and whites and things. And they're a lovely bird to look out for.
Let's look at the weird thing that the male does, though.
Yeah. Look at that.
What is this? What's going on here?
This is, look at me, girls, I'm available. She's showing off. The boys all kind of get around in a little group, and a bit like, like we know about things like black grouse and things that do lecking and things, where they kind of dance around. But this is a kind of an aquatic version of that. It's the Busby Berkeley of the duck world. They're kind of there doing these extravagant displays on the surface, and they're trying to demonstrate to the females that they are the best, and physical fitness is up there, and they are absolutely magnificent, and they'll provide the best that you need if you want some eggs laying. These are the guys who provide you with everything you need. So they do these elaborate dances, elaborate movements, and the females either kind of casually look on as if they're not really interested, or they take notice of them. And again, by the end of by the time they're flying back north, they will have already paired up, and the dazzling plumage combined with this extravagant dance seems to do the trick.
Yeah, look out for that on the bigger sort of deeper lakes and reservoirs this winter, because it's an amazing thing to see. It's a great piece of behaviour. Now, another lovely duck that joins us in winter is the Smew. A little bit harder to see, aren't they?
Yeah, again, numbers have declined in this country, more likely to do with changes in climate. We have milder winters these days, not just here, but across parts of Europe as well. So the birds that used to have to vacate, the Baltic states and all those, it gets really, really, really bitterly cold and icy, and they can't dive on a frozen lake. You can't make a living if you're a diving duck on a frozen lake. So they had to move west, they had to move south, and so we used to see much greater numbers on our reservoirs, in particular of Smew in this country, but we just don't anymore. I mean, they used to be pretty much certainly easy to find in southern England, but they could turn up absolutely anywhere in ones and twos and smallish numbers. But you get quite big numbers wintering in southern England. But that just isn't the case anymore. So any day with a Smew in it is an absolutely fantastic day. They're also called white nun. That's one of their kind of little colloquial names, which is really, really quite cute. The female's known as a redhead, and they belong to a group of birds called sawbill ducks. And all the female sawbill ducks are known as redheads of their species. So when you refer to a redhead, you can be a bit more specific about what you're describing. The female's really distinctive. That white cheek stands out when they're bobbing around, even on rough water. But the male, of course, I mean, that's, but again, on water, they can almost disappear. Black and white on water that's moving up and down. Well, they're the same colour as the water, essentially, in winter. So they can be really hard to pick out. But what a treat when you do. Yeah.
It's a real treat. And I have to say, as we're back on the diving, that Hayley in the events team has gone off and done a bit of research for us. And she says she's found some information suggesting that diving ducks can go much deeper than I was thinking. Eider duck, which we'll talk about a bit later on, can dive for 30 metres to forage for mussels. And because their legs are right at the back of their bodies, it allows them to kind of push themselves down, power themselves down through the water. So again, we'll have a look for a bit more information to share after this talk. But that sounds like an incredible depth, doesn't it?
Well, exactly. I mean, I've spent quite a lot of time watching sea ducks, and they're often quite a way offshore, and they dive down. If they're coming back up with food, they're having to go right down basically to the bottom of wherever they are. So often you'll see them in harbours and things. They'll come up with crabs and stuff, and you can understand they've only gone sort of 4 or 5 meters for that. But I suppose out at sea, yeah, it makes perfect sense. They've got to get down there and find the food. Yeah, amazing.
We're going to move on to some more sawbills now, but just a quick question I want to throw in from Neil, who says, was that a serrated bill on the Goldeneye?
Yeah. So again, sort of for catching. So it's a sawbill of sorts, and it's for catching fish and for catching invertebrates and more animal-based food is what they're after. So the sawbill allows them to catch that and hold on to it. Because I mean, if you try catching a small fish underwater, it's going to get away from you unless you've got some kind of really good means to keep hold of it. And so having that evolved sawbill really does help. Yeah.
Thanks for that question. So here's the redhead Smew. We've talked a little bit about that now. So let's move on to the next one. This one is the Goosander. Let's talk about Goosander.
Yeah, another sawbill. You can see that bill is absolutely perfectly developed for catching small fish. And they breed on rivers mainly, and then they kind of winter on lakes and reservoirs on the coast as well. They have a westerly bias. So, I mean, this part of the world, I see them fairly regularly, but if you live in the eastern part of the countries, you struggle a bit. So Wales, southwest England, western Scotland, Cumbria, Lancashire, into Northern Ireland, you'll see these birds, and the male has a lovely, almost salmon pink blush to it when he's in his finery. He's absolutely finest with this lovely black back and his bottle green head. The female's a really striking looking bird too. That lovely chestnut head and the white chin and the collar. They're really great, and you often see these on rivers in late summer with their broods, and they have large broods like you were saying before about Mallard, Jamie. And they'll come barreling down really fast moving rivers with these other birds in tow, and they just look great. They're absolutely superb. Again, tree nesters. They'll nest in holes in trees. They're a wonderful bird. Really, really bonny, and quite a size. They're quite a big, chunky duck. Yeah.
I've seen a female goosander with a load of ducklings in tow on a river in Herefordshire. It's absolutely beautiful. Quick question from Sharon, which is pertinent here. Any tips on telling Wigeon, Pochard, and Goosander apart? And it's obviously hard when we say this duck's bigger or this duck's smaller, because obviously you're not looking at them at the same time. But Goosander is a lot more kind of sleeker, I guess.
Yeah, it's got a very long bill. It doesn't have like a quacking duck kind of shape of a bill, so you can rule that out. The only thing you're ever really going to confuse a goosander with really is a Merganser. It's a red-breasted Merganser, which is shown there, because they are very long, very slim with that very long bill. Whereas Pochard and Wigeon are both kind of stocky. They look like ducks, in the way that we think of ducks. I think the easiest way to tell a Pochard and a Wigeon apart is the Wigeon's got a fabulous yellow stripe up the middle of the front of the face, and they have a kind of a pinkish kind of blush to the front, whereas a Pochard's jet black there and a fully copper coloured head. And then that lovely white back and wraps way around. As I was saying before, it's kind of the side becomes the back is the same thing. And of course, the fact that they dive so that their kind of behaviour is slightly different. Goosanders are also diving birds, but they will also kind of swim along with their heads sifting under the water like that. It's a very interesting technique that they're looking for things to go after. Yeah. And you'll see them with their heads submerged as they swim along.
Quick comparison shot then. What's the difference between these two species?
Well, the way I like to think of it is the Goosander is absolutely smart, very sleek and very fashionable, and the red-breasted Merganser is a bit tatty looking. Looks like it's just come out of a bin and it's been foraging around. They're very, 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 very different birds. They're very, I mean, obviously there are subtle differences in the way that they look. The red-breasted Merganser has that lovely red breast and that much shaggier crest and that lovely clear collar that because of the red breast you don't get on the Goosander. The Goosander's got that lovely cut off. The male and female, and in the female, Merganser, it's kind of diffused. It's not as clean cut as it is, and again, very, very shaggy, and that white goes through the eye quite distinctively. I mean, the Mergansers are more maritime than Goosander. You're more likely to see those in kind of estuaries and on the sea in winter than you are Goosanders.
Okay, we need to speed through the next few because I realise we've still got the sea ducks to talk about. So Shelduck.
Yes.
Did have an interesting and I think relevant question from Deborah. Which ducks crash their broods? Like group them together.
Well, Shelduck is the one that famously crashes its broods. Now these are really odd. They breed in very different habitat. They don't nest in holes in trees or build nests in the ground, or on the ground as such. They nest in burrows and under kind of tree roots and things like that. So they're a burrowing bird, and they'll nest miles away from the water, and then they'll march their little brood out to the water once they hatch. And then they'll form these creches. So there'll be, you can have groups of 30, 40, 50 more young Shelduck, in amongst a couple of dozen adult Shelduck. And then at the end of the summer, when all those birds are doing their eclipse molt, these go through a full molt as well. But most of the Shelduck in the UK fly to northern Germany, to the Wadden Sea, to molt, and then they come back here when they finish molting. There's a male there. You can see the male because he's got that very big, prominent red kind of knob at the base of the bill, which the female doesn't have. But a striking looking bird, again, a really big, almost goose size. That lovely kind of chestnut band, dark head, and black and white wings. It's a great bird.
Very distinct. I think we've got a short video of Shelduck here. Really nice to see. Let's move on, because I think we've had a really good look at them there, because this is a really, really unusual one, and a couple of people have asked questions about crossbreeding, and when you get those really difficult ducks that don't appear in any books or on any websites. What's been going on here? So talk us through.
Ducks, they're a bit naughty at times, and they will hybridize freely with closely related species. So lots of birds kind of, will baffle us. And if you go to your local canal, you'll see all kinds of things that look a bit like a mallard, but aren't quite a mallard. And there'll be bits of farmyard duck in there and all sorts of things. But wild birds also interbreed. Now, this is a really interesting looking bird, because on the shape of it, you would immediately say, well, that's a shoveler. Look at that bill, everything else about it kind of implies a shoveler, but there's something not quite right. It's been heavily photoshopped or something. But what it is a hybrid. So it's a shoveler and a bird called a cinnamon teal, which is normally a wild bird in North America. And they're relatively closely related. I mean, the teals and the shovelers, they're pretty closely related. The thing is about this bird, it doesn't show any of the features of, strongly of the parents. So, I mean, that big white stripe on the face looks more like a blue-winged teal or an Australian shoveler, and people think that's what it is when they see this bird. But it's actually, shoveler, when they go through their eclipse plumage, the males do have a kind of a remnant crescent on the face, so it's obviously something part of their makeup somewhere, some inherited piece of feature that they've lost, and it comes through in these hybrids. This is a bird that's been coming back to Leighton Moss. It's now here for its 5th consecutive winter. And when it first turned up, it was just all sorts of theories about what it was, and we finally nailed it. And it's quite a character. But be aware of that. If you're not sure about a bird, you can't put a name to it, consider the option that its parents have been up to something, and this is the unusual outcome of that.
And you often get that with mallards, mallard domestic duck, farmyard ducks, often mixing. Let's have a couple of very quick questions before we move on to sea ducks. So Lake Q&A, lovely Lake Verney again there. So I feel bad throwing these at you, John, because I don't know if you have the answers off the top of your head. But Nigel has asked, what's a duck's typical lifespan? How many years can they live for?
It'll vary, but I mean, they're going to be fairly well lived. I mean, they're going to be a good decade and into 20s, some of them. I mean, off the top of my head, I can't think of a specific one, but I memean, they'll live for quite some years. I mean, the ringing data that'll have been gathered over the years will be really useful. Again, we can look into that, and I can try and find, if we've got any records of the oldest Eider or anything like that. We'll have something that we can do, so we can come back to you on that. But most ducks are probably pretty well long lived. I mean, they'll do okay, because generally bigger birds tend to live longer.
Yeah.
Like things like that, the cinnamon teal, we know already that's at least 5 years old. I'm guessing they'll probably a good dozen years for most ducks, I thought. I'm not 100%. I'll check.
We'll return to that if we can. Quick one from Jackie, who says, "Are pintail bigger than mallards?" Jackie finds it quite hard to distinguish the brown female ducks from one another. So
yeah, you're not alone, Jackie. It's a tricky one. They're sort of similar size. I mean, pintail are kind of longer and more slender, but they're of the same general size. Most of those dabbling ducks kind of are It's subtle structural changes. So for me, if I was to see a distant female mallard or pintail, I'd be able to tell it apart purely on shape. But that's about practice. It's about going out and sort of looking at ducks a lot more. So the female pintail is a more elegant bird. It's a longer necked bird, it's smaller headed. It's got a much more attenuated, longer, extended kind of rear end. And it sits lower in the water because it's not quite as robust. So once you're used to that, you'll see that it becomes quite an easy thing to tell apart. But yeah, when you're kind of starting out and you're trying to get things, plumage is often really no use whatsoever in these things when they're sat in the water. It's all about shape and structure.
Yeah. And behaviour, I guess, as well. So two questions coming. One from Elaine, but another similar one as well. Do those hybridized ducks, that cinnamon teal shoveler, will that breed? Is that likely to breed?
We've not seen anything that would imply that it's successfully bred yet. It has paired up with a female shoveler on a couple of occasions, and presumably goes to wherever the shovelers that it migrates with further north, and probably attempts to breed. Now, a lot of hybrid animals tend to be infertile, but not so with ducks, because you can get second generation hybrids. So it may be that this in particular, maybe he is infertile and he's not passed on those rather dodgy genes onto anything else. Or it may be that we start seeing his offspring in the next couple of years. Don't quite look like shoveler, but so some will and some won't. Generally, I mean, from an evolutionary perspective, I suppose it's not a good idea to continue to have hybrid. But that's how I guess new species are evolved as well ultimately. So some will breed and some will find a mate, and some simply will be absolutely ignored by females because they just don't recognise it.
Anyway, keep an eye out at RSPB Leighton Moss. Let's see what happens in the next few years. But do you go and visit? There's a lot of there. Let's go over to the sea ducks now. This is a lovely shot of one of our sea reserves. Now I'm going to say that's South Stack, I'm guessing. Yeah, I'm right there. RSPB South Stack. Let's take a look at the Eider. We're going to look at the female first. So tell us all about Eider.
Right, Eider, as you can see there, the female sat very low in that kind of nice mossy, kind of heathery, licheney kind of filled area. And again, that's where you see that brilliant camouflage. The females excel. While we all marvel at the beauty of the males, well, actually the females are doing a far better job, really, because they're protecting the eggs, they're protecting the chicks. And the Eiders sit there tight on their nest, which is made out of the down of their breast feathers. So they pluck the feathers out, and that's where we get Eider down from, which used to be kind of harvested by people for bed filling and all the rest of it. Now, little fact here: Eider down used to be what we called our bedding. Then, for some reason, we started calling them continental quilts in the 70s and 80s when Eider down came out of fashion, and we started using synthetic fillings. And then we adopted the French duvet for the same thing, and we all call it a duvet now. But duvet, weirdly, is Eider in French. So it's kind of gone full circle. So we're still under an eider down of sorts, whether it's synthetic or not. Yeah, but they are just. I mean, these are great birds. These are really, hardy northern birds are eiders. They're sea ducks. They live out in.
Let's see the male because the male's extraordinary looking as well.
Yeah, that's a fabulous profile. I mean, nothing else looks like that really that you're going to see. I mean, it's got a whacking great bill on it, and that's a big, well-developed bill for cracking open things like crabs and shellfish that they dive down for on the seabed. You've got a lovely little kind of greeny colour on the back of the neck and that black cap and the black and white sides there. They're just, they're great. And they make a wonderful sound, which I think you've got some recording.
Yeah, we're going to hear that. So this is the Frankie Howard of the bird world. And those of us of a certain generation will know what I'm talking about. So let's have a look and a listen. Lovely photos, lovely shots, and lovely sounds there. So let's move on to the next one. So this is one you're less likely to see, and I will just say at this point that some of these ducks spend the winter out at sea. You won't see them on your local duck pond. Well, unlikely, but that marine habitat is surprisingly important to a lot of these birds. These birds, again, like a lot of the others, come down from the north. And one thing we are particularly concerned about is disturbance. We talked about disturbance. So it's disturbance at sea. And when we're looking at things like offshore wind farms, they can really have an impact on not just ducks, but divers as well that need that kind of marine space. And I was talking to, I don't know if any of you watched our previous webinar with Samuel Robot, our marine policy officer. He was actually explaining to me that when you have a wind farm out at sea, it really displaces the behaviour, the areas that those sea ducks will use, particularly Eider. So really important to keep those spaces safe for them, isn't it? And be aware of kind of development proposals.
That's right. I mean, we have to, while we want to obviously encourage more sustainable energy options, and we have to make sure that they're in the right place. And so very often we think about things like protecting breeding areas and protecting these, and then these things nest up on lakes in the tundra, up in the far north and things, and then they migrate. A lot of these will winter around the UK coast and the Irish Sea and places like that. And if there are proposals for big offshore wind farms, we need to make sure that they don't impact on the feeding areas of these things, because they will be displaced by that. And if they can't find the food to sustain them through the winter, again, it means higher mortality rate and declining population. So it's really important that we understand the needs offshore for these birds, and we don't allow that infrastructure to kind of come in and cause chaos with them, really. So Scoter are, they're great, but they will occasionally turn up on just lakes and ponds in the middle of the country when they're migrating from the sea to their breeding grounds north, because they'll pass over the UK. And in spring, you can often stand outside in certain parts of northern England and southern Scotland in particular, and bits of North Wales, I guess, as well. You can listen upwards and you can hear them migrating at night in huge flocks as they move across the country, heading across the North Sea and then up into further places further north. Fabulous, great birds. The males are very distinctive, all black with that lovely little yellow bit on the bill. The females also equally distinctive with that pale cheek. We get them occasionally just turning up in random places, so always worth keeping an eye out for, particularly in spring and autumn.
Let's move on to a slightly less seen one. Oh, quick video of the common Scoter. Really hard to watch sea ducks. I've been on the coast of Titchwell with the telescope, and I know, again, like a diving duck, you're like, oh, it's there. Oh no, there's a wave in the way. It's there. But rewarding because you see some stunning birds. Let's have a look at a couple of the others now. So this next one, less likely to see.
Yeah, this is velvet Scoter. This is much scarcer bird, and occasionally drop in small numbers with big flocks of common Scoter off the east coast or places like that. And if you kind of go, with the telescope, usually you'll pick them out. But that bill is just extraordinary, that bit of white around the eye. In flight, these are very different from common Scoter. They've got a big patch of white in the wing, whereas the common Scoter is all dark. So if you see a flock of Scoter flying, or just stretching its wings out on the water, and you get a flash of white, you're onto something good. And you kind of want to persevere with that and see if you can pick out a velvet Scoter. But what a stunning looking bird.
Extraordinary looking bird. So final bird now, final duck. So this is one of my favourites. This is the long-tailed duck. And I've seen these offshore from the Norfolk coast. Tell us about long-tailed duck.
Yeah, again, a sea duck that dives for food. You'll see these in little packs often on the water surface. I was up in Shetland recently, and there were flocks of them just off there, and then they're great. And they all kind of go down together, and they all kind of come back up again. These males are just something else. I mean, they're just quite remarkable looking birds. They used to be called old squaw in North America, but obviously for good reason they've changed the name, and they're now adopted the kind of long-tailed duck name that we have here. But they're just so delicate and just so beautifully done. It's like they've been designed by a designer, rather than someone sat down and thought, what can I come up with? Because they are quite remarkable to look at.
And let's hear the sound, please, because I love this noise. I don't know what it is about sea ducks and having great calls. Female long-tailed duck, not so long-tailed, but similar, as you'll see.
Yeah, a tricky one. I mean, this is a bird watcher's bird, really. Find one of these kind of on your local reservoir after a cold kind of winter storm or something like that. They'll just drop in odd places and you'll just see them. But you might think, what on earth is that? I mean, the male's quite distinctive. So there's a few subtle differences. They're quite a small duck, that sort of very sort of chocolatey brown around the body, but they're kind of a lot white on the face, and they're quite a patchy, blotchy little bird, actually. They're not easy, but good fun to have a go at if you see them. And again, these are diving ducks, so even if they're on a lake or a reservoir, they'll dive. Much easier when you see them in with a group of males as well. But yeah.
Let's have a look at the next slide. So That's been absolutely brilliant. I don't think we've got time for any CQ&A. I think we've been answering the questions pretty well all the way through, I have to say. Thank you for everyone's questions. There are a few we're not going to get time to come to, but if we do get a chance, John and I will take a look at them afterwards and we'll try to do our best to get back to you.
Yeah.
Just wanted to recommend a few RSPB nature reserves that you could go out and get really good views of ducks. I mean, we've got over 200 nature reserves, and actually many of them are good for duck watching. Obviously, John, you're at Leighton Moss, so you're slightly biased, but I mean, there's a great selection here. I think, I mean, for me, sea duck watching off the North Norfolk coast is quite something. I love doing that. Dungeness, our oldest nature reserve, down in Kent, very good for things like Smew. Rye Meads, pretty good for all sorts of ducks, actually. And then you've got Loch Leven, Loch Winnock. You get all those other ducks coming down from the north. Some of the first places they touch down on are those lochs. Final slide, please. And just a few other resources. We will, as I say, we're recording this session. This will all go on YouTube afterwards, so you'll be able to catch up with all these links. We have got resources on our websites for finding out more about birds and you know, some ID tips and things. And we will definitely do, someone has asked, we will definitely do some more ID webinars. So it just remains for me to say very quickly, because we've overrun terribly, my appalling cherry timing. We get so excited about ducks, don't we, John? John, thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you so much for being our expert today. I also would like to thank Lisa, Hayley and Claire, who've been working incredibly hard in the background, the events team, making this all run so smoothly, sorting out the bookings and everything. We will send you a little survey afterwards so you can give us some feedback. And also, if anyone's got any other ideas for future webinars, we'd love to hear them. And yeah, massive thank you to all of you, over 300 of you who watched and joined us today. So yeah, goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.